turn an IP address into a set of geolocation coordinates. And it's not so hard these days to turn a set of geolocation coordinates into a Google satellite photograph of the house that she's in. Maybe in a few years we'll have those with real-time updates, so you can say, is there a car parked out front right now or not? All of this happens before she says anything, before she decides to follow your advice or not about, I live in West Lafayette and at this street corner, stuff like that. So there's something fundamentally wrong there. We'd like to make it so that by default you don't broadcast all this information about yourself, and then you can choose, yes, I want to tell you about myself, or no, I don't want to provide more details. Another example, sick Alice. Maybe Alice wants to learn more about diabetes. Maybe her grandmother has diabetes, and she's learning about it from work or from school. And she doesn't want the network operator people to say, hey, she's looking at cancer websites or diabetes websites. She's going to cost us more in healthcare next year. Let's fire her now. That sort of thing happens pretty often in industry. That's a shame. It'd be nice to fix that. Consumer Alice. Let's say you go to, let's say you look at Amazon all the time. They build huge databases about you. There's a corporation called DoubleClick. Google's building lots of databases. AOL a little while ago published like 14 million search queries, and they allegedly anonymized them. But they didn't do it very well. They just crossed off the IP address and put in a pseudonym, a number instead. So people started looking through the list and saying, well, this person, and they're anonymous, so we don't know who they are, searched for pharmacies near 123 Main Street, West Lafayette, Indiana. And then they also searched for all these other things. I wonder who that was. So that's a few examples of large databases. Maybe another example, you go to buy car insurance in a few years, and your insurance company says, do you like to race cars? And you say no, and they say, what about that book you looked at on Amazon 3 years ago? Is that a crazy example? They've got the database. They're building all of these databases about us. I don't know what they're going to use them for down the road. And so part of our goal with Tor is to give individuals and also corporations and governments the choice. Am I going to get stuck in all these databases? Am I going to keep putting more and more of my information into these databases and we don't know what people are going to do with them? Or am I going to choose for myself what I'll reveal in each case? And then there's oppressed Alice. Maybe Alice is in China or Iran, and they're not able to look at certain websites. Tor gives them the ability to come out wherever they want to. Another example of that, I was doing an interview with a person from the LA Times a couple of years ago. And the LA Times contracts out to one of these companies that helps keep them safe on the internet, and they couldn't look at the Tor website because that was scary. And the LA Times reporter was really angry that his local network people wouldn't let him look at a website that he was trying to write an article about. So that's a few more examples. So those are some examples of the individuals who care about this stuff. There are also some examples of the attackers we might worry about. The hostile Bob is the easy one. That's the intuitive one. I sell the logs. I collect large databases. Anybody who wants to buy them, I'm happy to sell them. I've read an article a little while ago about cable modem providers selling click-throughs from click logs from all of their customers. And they just collect them. I don't know if Comcast was one, but there are a couple of other big ones that just collect everything all their customers click, and they sell them. And they're not very targeted logs, so they can't sell them for very much. But hey, 50 cents per person per day is better than 0 cents per person per day. So you might as well collect them and sell them. I don't know when this is going to come out, and a lot of people will be upset by it, or maybe we're all happy to be put in databases and sold. Maybe nobody will complain. We'll find out. So that's the easy one, the hostile Bob. I sell the logs. But then there's the slightly more subtle one, the incompetent Bob. I put all the logs in a truck and I sent them across the country, and turns out they didn't arrive. Oops, sorry. I don't know where they are. And we hear a new story every week from a new company in California that just lost 30 million names and addresses and social security numbers and credit card numbers. And it's always California we hear about because they passed the law saying if you lose personal information about a citizen of the state of California, then you have to notify them. So we're hearing more and more organizations notifying people. And other states are saying, hey, wait a minute, I should have a law like that. Our citizens should be notified too. Last I checked, the federal government was thinking about passing a law outlawing laws like this because enough corporations had lobbied them saying that's really a hassle on our part, and could you make it so that we don't have to report these things. So we'll find out where that goes. And then there's the indifferent Bob. I collect the logs, and I wasn't going to sell them. I wasn't going to give them out, but this guy offered me $20, and they're not my secrets, so sure, I'll give them out. So these are some examples of the different things that individuals are concerned about on the internet. Okay, corporations care about this stuff for the same reasons, but they phrase it a little bit differently. Maybe you want to check out the competition's website without having to know exactly how long you spend on each page. I worked at a startup a couple of years ago, and one of my jobs every evening was to collate the weblogs and send that to the salespeople. And so they would know which people had spent how many minutes looking at which product pages. So they'd know exactly who to call back the next day and say, a little bird told me that you're interested in buying this. Let me tell you more about it. So companies aren't really that excited about broadcasting all that information to their ISP and to their competitors. Another more extreme example, I was talking to a major hardware vendor a couple of years ago, and they were looking at their competition's website, and it turns out they got a different answer through Tor than they did going directly from their IP addresses. And that's because the competition had set up their web server saying, if you're coming from over here, give them this page, otherwise give them the real page. And they had no idea that was happening until suddenly they tried showing up from different places. So that's an example where the internet isn't flat. Another example of that is Google. They give you a different answer depending on where in the world you're coming from. Not only do they say, well, you probably want the coffee shop down the street from you in Italy, but they also say, well, you probably want pages in Italian. And you probably don't want to see anything that the Italian government doesn't want you to see. Each of these countries has a different list of pages that they're not allowed to show you, depending on what country you're coming from. And then maybe there's a compromised network. Do you want to buy a list of Alice's suppliers? Where does Ford buy its tires from? What are the engineering department's favorite search terms? Another example of this, you guys know about Monster.com, right? The job search site. Let's imagine all the engineers at Cisco are looking for a new job today. Who knows this information first? Does Monster sell it? Should they sell it? Would we even know? So maybe companies would like to protect that sort of information in terms of the origin of communications for their employees. Okay, so that's corporations. Law enforcement also use Tor. They use it for pretty much the same reasons, but they phrase it a little bit differently. Maybe you want to do investigate a website, and you don't want to have .mil or .gov show up in the web logs. Maybe you want to do a sting operation. Maybe you want to show up on an instant messaging site or a chat room and say, I'm 8 years old and I'd really like to meet you at the street corner. Turns out that doesn't work very well when you show up with a .gov address. People catch on. I was talking to some FBI folks in Indianapolis a little while ago, and they were explaining that, yeah, they could go after this organized crime group that they learned about, but would my family really be safe if I do that? Why don't I just leave them alone? And that sucks. I don't want to live in a world where the police decide that it's not worth their risk or their time going after the real criminals because maybe they'll retaliate. And then turning it around, anonymous tips. I was chatting with the folks who run the CIA anonymous tip line a little while ago. And the way it works is you go to CIA.gov and you click on, I want to submit an anonymous tip. Maybe there should be more to it than that. And, they're not completely crazy over there. They realize that they should do encryption. So now the way it works is the nice guy in Iraq goes into the internet cafe, and now he has an encrypted conversation with CIA.gov. I'm not sure this is actually any better. So wouldn't it be nice if we had some sort of privacy, security, traffic analysis resistant anonymity system to solve that sort of thing? Okay, governments, again for the same reasons, but they phrase it differently. What would you bid for a list of Baghdad IP addresses that get email from .gov? Anybody else out there interested in that information? What does the CIA Google for? Google knows. The CIA's ISP knows.